You know, Hannity, I had forgotten what it was like to be a guest. I used to be on with you like a couple of times a week. You never write, you never call.
I had the same experience. I was on early one day this week on Fox and Friends. I'm like, oh, I forgot what it's like to be a guest. And as a guest, I never shut up.
Yeah, it's like, okay, we got a hard break here, Hannity. Wrap.
Exactly.
Sean, great show tonight. I love Sarah
You too.
Carter.
Have a great show.
Incredible reporting. And you have a good rest of the night. Good evening from Washington. It's great to be back home. I'm Laura Ingraham, and this is the Ingraham Angle. All right, fasten your seatbelts. It's so much news. Every night I say that, and it's not hype. There are so many big stories: foreign policy, staffing at the White House, what they're doing with your tax dollars on Capitol Hill, and yes, the huge shakeup at the top of the president's national security team. General H.R. McMaster is out, and John Bolton is in. President Trump loses a lawyer who doesn't want him to talk to the special counsel. Alan Dershowitz will tell us if Trump is walking right into a trap. Plus, we're going to show you stunning surveillance video of the Las Vegas shooter. We've been asking for this and waiting for it, and experts are going to tell us what they see, which we may not notice. And YouTube launching a chilling new salvo in its war on free speech, this time targeting guns and gun owners. But first, how the GOP walled off Trump. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Now, why are these people smiling about the $1.3 trillion spending package passed by the House today? Chuck Schumer, explain your joy.
This spending agreement brings the era of austerity to an unceremonious end. We Democrats are really happy with what we were able to accomplish on a number of priorities that Democrats have fought for all along.
Democrats are thrilled because they're about to secure runaway spending that was out of reach even under Obama. Discretionary spending is skyrocketing. No more budget caps for this gang. Meanwhile, Republicans are tripping all over themselves. Have you seen this? They're trying to justify this boondoggle. Now, I realize they're up against, as usual, government shutdown, but the largest military expenditure in 14 years and an explosion in discretionary spending is not going to pave the way to victory in November. And by the way, if you're going to increase military funding this much, how about even the pretense of trying to offset some of that with spending cuts? Once a fiscal hawk when he was in Congress, Budget Director Mick Mulvaney, he tried mightily today to sell this rotten piece of fish.
We've talked for the last, 3, 4, 5, 6 months about trying to get the president's priorities funded, and this omnibus bill does that. When we look at the bill, we have to weigh what we asked for and what we had to give away to give it. Is it perfect? No. Is it exactly what we asked for in the budget? No. Were we ever going to get that? No. That's not how the process works.
Oh, thanks for the tutorial. When the American people have given you both houses of Congress and the White House, it's what you all said you needed, it should be the way the process works, Director Mulvaney. The GOP just cannot get its act together. The most important thing the president promised, his #1 priority, was getting that border wall built. Did that get lost on the people in Congress? Did they not catch the hundreds of times he mentioned it and during the rallies? He asked Congress for $1.6 billion to build 74 miles of concrete wall. Well, this omnibus orgy of spending dedicates a puny $641 million to something called border reinforcements. But Speaker Paul Ryan says, don't worry about it.
We fund government 1 year at a time. That's how the budget process works. Sure. So we're going to fund the wall 1 year at a time, in this case, for the next 6 months. You need fences, you need cameras, you need electronic devices, you need these the aerial devices to be able to police it. In the mountainous areas, you can't build a wall over a mountain, so you need cameras and you need drones up there. So it's a border wall system. It's different kinds of wall based on different kinds of conditions on the ground, and that's what we fund.
Oh my gosh, that is just Washington speak. Sensors, extra fencing, sensors. What are they going to use? iPhones? Drones? This is not what the president promised. He vowed to build a wall. It is not complicated. And now we have the biggest spending bill in history, and it sets aside $640 million to supposedly fund wall construction for 1 year. My friends, I hate to say this, but as I see it right now, tonight, the wall is never going to happen. Because as we've dug into this and really looked into this, this bill doesn't fund the wall at all. In fact, the bill only pays for construction, I can't even believe I'm saying this, of see-through fencing that Congress actually authorized, I remember this, back in 2006. The omnibus bill that we're talking about tonight funds 33 miles of new barriers and replacement fencing for 59 miles. But understand this, there is no wall construction. All told, you, the taxpayer, will re-fence part of the border for a grand total of, wait for it, 92 miles. You know what that looks like? It looks like this, 92 miles. See that little white spot? We should have made it pink. That little white spot, look how big the border is. Why bother at all? Why don't we just put the big bienvenidos welcome mat at the border, because it doesn't matter. If the Republicans lose the midterms, the Democrats will never fund this thing and will be reliant on Paul Ryan's sensors and a few drones and replacement fencing to protect America. I will repeat, this is not what the American people voted for. And you know what really gets me? It's an embarrassment to the president. He knew how to win this election, and the Republicans, the swamp, want to take it away from him. Last week, he was at the border inspecting wall prototypes when he said this.
Look at the fence, and it's a very powerful fence, not doing the trick, because they cut holes in it, and then they're patching holes all the time. I'm just looking, you have hundreds of holes cut in and patched. So the fence is not strong enough. It's not the right idea. But for those people, if you don't have a wall system, we're not going to have a country.
Okay, I agree with him. It can't be fences that are repaired intermittently with holes in them. See, if you don't have a wall, you don't have a country. Today there was a meeting of millennials at the White House. It was pretty cool. And it is great to hear their concerns on a variety of topics. But how about the concern that the government, in this type of omnibus spending bill, is mortgaging away their future? The money that's being spent and borrowed and printed. This is Congressman Dave Bratt.
Everyone's concerned about the kids, except they're not. We're putting all this on the kid's credit card. It's intergenerational theft of the first magnitude. It's immoral. It's unethical. And we have to make a change.
We are saddling the next generation with ever-growing debt. And for what? If we truly cared about the millennials, we would firstly keep them safe by immediately funding the border wall. Then we would find real cuts throughout the federal budget to offset these radical expenditures so they wouldn't be stuck with the bill long after that military hardware and that flimsy border fence we're buying have all rusted away. We can do better. We must do better, or Republicans do not deserve to be in the majority. And that's the angle. Joining us now for reaction is South Carolina Republican Congressman Ralph Norman, who joins us from Charlotte. And here in Washington is Richard Goodstein. He's smiling like the cat who ate the canary. He's an attorney, Democratic strategist friend. Great to see both of you. All right, Congressman, I got to start with you. You guys got the House, you got the Senate, and you got the White House. And now we have a spendorama, which I imagine Barack Obama must be watching this somewhere comfortably and thinking, man, I got to hand it to you guys. You guys can do it better than I can. You can spend that money better than I can. What's going on here, Congressman?
Well, Laura's unacceptable. What did you say, dead fish? That's what I think this spending bill is, the omnibus. You know, it's really an insult to get a 2,200-page document and get 16 hours to read it. If you do the math, I have to read 137 pages an hour and digest it. And now we're on a 2-week vacation? Really? The system is broken. We've gotten the 12 appropriations over back in September. And, you know, we've got to make a change, and I'm tired of it. And I, along with a lot of other members, I'm a member of the Freedom Caucus. We voted against the rule today. We're not elected. to bankrupt this country. And as Congressman Bratt said, you know, we are saddling our children with debt. If you do the math, for every taxpayer, it's a little under $200,000.
Oh, it's stunning.
That's sad.
It's stunning. And I got to play this. I got to play this soundbite for you guys. Nancy Pelosi, who also seemed very happy, she had an extra spring in her step today, said this. Let's watch.
It's interesting to see from the standpoint of regular order why the Republicans thought that that would be a good idea. Well, I think one of the reasons they rushed it through, posting it last night, taking it to rules on the floor today, not honoring the 3-day rule, they didn't want their Republican colleagues to see just exactly what was in the bill.
Well, she's famously said you have to pass it to see what's in it. It's 2,000 plus pages. We stacked it up last night, guys. And no one's reading this bill, let's face it. You vote on it, you get the heck out of town. The Senate looks like it's going to vote on it tonight because they see what's the writings on the wall. Richard Goodstein, look, I'm embarrassed tonight as a Republican. And that might not sell on TV, and maybe other networks are going to do all sex all the time. Maybe they'll have higher ratings. But I find this to be really important. We do not have the money for this spending. Republicans campaigned on this. And Democrats, look, if I'm you, I'm like sitting back going, what do we have to do now?
Yeah.
Good stuff.
I feel your pain. Seriously. I know where you've been and where Sean and others have been on deficit spending. At least when Barack Obama was running up trillion-dollar deficits, we had the Great Recession to recover from. Everybody's boasting now about how great this economy is, and to run trillion-dollar deficits in the face of that really is not right. And you talked with Sean earlier about sticking to promises, whether it's the border wall or balancing the budget or bringing coal jobs back. Yeah, as you put it, Donald Trump knew how to win the election. With all due respect, he knew how to win the election by saying things that everybody who knew policy knew he couldn't deliver on.
No, I don't agree with you. You can build a wall. We can put a man on the moon. We can do all the innovation we've done in technology. I think America could solve pretty much any big problem ahead of it if it wants to. But in Washington, Richard, it's both Republicans and Democrats. I'm not letting Democrats off the hook because they're big spenders too. They just want to keep it all going because the lobbyists get paid, the lawyers get all the money. I'm a former lawyer. Believe me, it's nice to charge $700 an hour. But the American people demand real accountability. What bang are we getting for this buck here? Is it really going to make all those millennials safer and more prosperous and happier? Congressman, you can chime in here, but look, the Democrats didn't get everything they want. Obviously, Republicans, no one's going to get everything they want. I'm not going to come here tonight saying the president was going to get everything. But it seems to me he has an opportunity or had an opportunity to go to the American people and say, I campaigned on this. I think this is critical for the future of the country. If the government has to shut down because both parties don't want to protect our country, that's really sad, but maybe we need to have a conversation about that. I think he had to do that.
Well, and you can't let this process continue with the threat of a shutdown. You know, I was perfectly willing to have a shutdown and sit up in Washington, D.C. for 6 months or as long as it takes to not have the giveaway programs that we've had. Now, the Democrats are a huge part of this. If you look at the vote today on the rule, which all the rule was is allowing the budget to be voted on, it barely passed 211 to 207, and 182 Democrats
voted. Of course, you needed the Democrats. They don't have enough Republicans, Congressman. They needed the Democrat votes. And of course the Democrats are going to support this. Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they support it? They're going to support it. We got to get to Bolton, guys. We got to get to Bolton. This is huge news. I'm sorry. I'll hold you both for an hour. John Bolton is replacing H.R. McMaster today, and my goodness, MSNBC and others were in a total meltdown. World War III is about to happen. Let's watch.
John Bolton is known as a hardliner, clearly different than others in the administration now on the Iran agreement, for example, and it points to danger signals.
So many millions of voters voted against in 2016 who voted against stupid wars and bringing the biggest hawk there's ever been and put him as head of national security is awful.
For John Bolton, he is the hammer and everything is a nail.
I've always loved that phrase, but come on, Richard, the idea that Bolton is going to like order Trump around. Okay, you're going to go to war in country X. I don't think so. Trump is not a military interventionist. even if John Bolton's more of a neocon, your view.
But he's impressionable, the president is. I mean, the explanation was, well, McMaster was more fond of the Iran deal, and therefore Trump had to get rid of him.
A lot.
Well, what my point is, though, we knew where he was. The Iran deal was a live issue during the campaign. Yeah. To say now, well, I hired this guy who didn't agree with me, why didn't you ask him when you hired him? And the fact is, John Bolton seems to be more interventionist, right? And at the same time that the president's thumping his chest about meeting with Kim Jong-un, maybe doing away with the North Korean nuclear threat, if we rip up that Iran deal within months, maybe, we don't know how many, Iran's going to be a nuclear threat in a region that's a tinderbox.
Yeah, so. I think, Congressman, I think Bolton, he does have a lot of experience, obviously, at the UN. He knows the swamp, been in Washington for some time. Doesn't agree with the president. The president does like to have these differing views on his staff still, I think. Your reaction to this, another shakeup tonight?
It's a great hire. We've had Bolton in meetings on Capitol Hill. He's knowledgeable. He's straightforward. He will not agree with this president if he really doesn't think it's in the best interest of the country. But one thing good about the President Trump, he encourages that. Now, he is going to be the one to make the final decision. But John Bolton, I have the highest respect for. He is. We have not interviewed anybody in the meetings that I've had where he hasn't answered every question. He sat for an hour and a half to 2 talking about foreign policy. That's his bailiwick. That's what he likes. And I applaud the president for taking, and the press, MSNBC, when have you ever heard them compliment this president on anything?
Never. He could, again, cure lung cancer, and they'd be like, why didn't you do it 2 weeks ago? I mean, no, there's nothing the president's going to do. They're going to love it. Great segment, guys. And I have a question for you all. Did President Trump just lose a lawyer who might actually save him from himself in the Russia investigation? That's kind of wild. Dershowitz weighs in next. A very big shakeup today on President Trump's legal team as lead attorney John Dowd resigned. Trump reportedly was displeased this weekend when the attorney called on the Justice Department to end the special counsel's investigation. Well, another conflict was exposed today when Trump said that he favored what Dowd had opposed.
Mr. President, would you still like to testify to Special Counsel Robert Mueller, sir?
Thank you. Sure, I would like to.
I would like to.
I would like to, as in talk to the special counsel. But is the president walking into a trap? Let's ask two of the sharpest legal minds out there. Emeritus Harvard Law professor Alan Dershowitz, author of the book, The Case Against BDS, Why Singling Out Israel for Boycott is Anti-Semitic and Anti-Peace. And in San Francisco, attorney Harmeet Dillon, who's a national committee woman for the RNC for California. Great to see both of you. Professor Dershowitz and Harmeet, we've talked about this issue. It sends a chill down my spine and up my spine as a former defense attorney to hear about how the president wants to go in and talk to Mueller. Professor Dershowitz, what are the pitfalls here?
Well, what I couldn't believe is what I heard on television shows, that he actually offered a job to be his lawyer to Bob Bennett. Bob Bennett, I wonder if anybody told him, was the lawyer who got Bill Clinton impeached. Bob Bennett was the lawyer who told Bill Clinton, it's okay, you can testify at a deposition about your sex life, and that's what got him impeached. He could have easily settled the case for $750,000. I called it the greatest legal blunder of the 20th century, and Bob Bennett was offered a job to come and become Trump's lawyer. I don't know what's going on in that White House. He, of course, should not testify unless he absolutely has to. And if he has to, it should be under the most rigorous restrictions of time and type of questions. And he should be prepared to answer yes, no, I don't recall, instead of giving long, long answers. Because the one thing they're trying to get him on is perjury. And there's no defense against that. Perjury is one of those specified in the Constitution for impeachment, and that's the one issue that has to be avoided at all costs.
Full disclosure, actually, I worked for Bob Bennett at Skadden Arps many, many years ago. I didn't work on that case, but I did work for Bennett at Skadden Arps. Harmeet, I would ask you about this. The big swirling controversy is, oh, no lawyer wants to work for Donald Trump. Well, first of all, a lot of law firms, big law firms, don't like getting involved in these big political matters for a variety of reasons. And Trump, everything's very toxic now. But this is what the former acting Solicitor General for Obama said today. Let's watch.
I represented bin Laden's driver, but I'd have trouble representing Donald Trump. And the reason for that is very simple, which is, you know, the guy doesn't believe in the rule of law.
That's coming from the Obama administration with the way they, of course, handled the Hillary email investigation and so forth. But Harmeet, your reaction to this, what about written answers to questions? What about just a narrow area in which Donald Trump would answer questions? Could that be acceptable? Or is that another, as Professor Dershowitz says, perjury trap, perhaps?
Well, I think it's less of a perjury trap if the president answers written questions, but it causes its own problems. I mean, for one thing, I don't think the president of the United States, setting aside whether it's Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, or whoever, should be answering questions like this from a special counsel unless there is clear evidence of a crime and also is showing that he's the only person who can answer those questions. Absent that, this is a perjury trap, and it does trouble me as a supporter of the president that he wants to talk to special counsel under these circumstances. It is absolutely a perjury trap. And I think that one of the frustrations here of his lawyers and other lawyers is that maybe the president isn't following the sound advice of some of his lawyers, which is a serious problem. And, you know, a lot of lawyers would have a problem with a client who isn't following good advice. So that's
Professor Dershowitz, that's a big issue, right? Because Donald Trump's such a strong personality. He's been his own advisor and been pretty successful in doing that time after time. When people said no, he said yes, and he usually wins. But the law is a very different deal. And so you can talk about that. You're managing a client that doesn't want to listen.
It's very, very difficult, of course. But I love what the former Solicitor General said. He wouldn't represent Donald Trump because he doesn't believe in the rule of law, but he represented bin Laden's driver. None of these, criminals generally don't believe in the rule of law. If that was the basis for not representing somebody, all of us criminal lawyers would be out of business. That's a phony argument. I think the better argument is that it's hard to represent a client who doesn't listen to you, who doesn't take your advice. I think the president is doing something very strategic, by the way. I think he has good cop, bad cop. He has the good cops who are trying to make a deal with the special counsel to limit his exposure, to limit the kinds of questions. But then he's also preparing bad cops, Joe DeGenova, who can get on television, who can go to court, who can help litigate. I don't think that's such a bad strategy. The problem is somebody like Dowd didn't want to be caught in the middle of that. He wanted to be in control of the strategy, and he wanted to play only good cop.
I also think,
Laura,
go ahead, Harmeet.
I was going to say I agree with Alan, but you can't be both the good cop and the bad cop. And Dowd had the situation where last week he was calling on the White House on the special counsel to, limit his investigation, and you can't be that same person who's negotiating the terms of the interview of the president.
That's right.
So he can't have it both ways.
I do think also, and
I agree with that.
I also think, guys, we're almost out of time, but you also have to bring in people who are not sometimes in their late 70s, early 80s. Again, not ageist, but this is other than you, Dersh. But you've already been asked this question. But it's important to bring in people who are in the prime and have experience and so forth. I know he's interviewed Emmett Flood, who's an old co-clerk of mine, phenomenal Williams and Connolly attorney. You can put together a team that has senior statesmen, lawyers. You can have a little bit younger, and bring that dynamic
you left out one group.
What?
You left out one group.
What?
He ought to and he must include women on his defense team. You
100%.
need to have women on a defense team. Absolutely.
Because we're smarter.
You need young people. You need people of color. You need people who are women. You need people from every background. You don't know what you're going to get when you get a jury. You don't know what judge you're going to pull. You must be prepared for every eventuality. Look, we know that they put the case in the District of Columbia because they wanted a particular kind of jury rather than the Virginia jury. Both sides have to be able to play that game and get the maximum advantage out of the differences in jurors, differences in defense counsel, differences in judges.
They're not going to be having a jury, though, Alan.
Well, God forbid we get to a jury in this case. Thank you.
Jury trial?
Maybe not against Donald Trump, but against some of the other people. By the way, my colleague Larry Tribe has now changed his mind and says you can actually prosecute a sitting president. He had previously, when Clinton was president, said you can't prosecute a sitting president. I think he was right the first time, not this time. I don't think you can prosecute a sitting president, though it's not clear as a matter of law.
Yeah, well, we'll see. But I think he has got to get the best team in place. I don't care what color you are or what your background is. But women attorneys, Harmeet, they're really smart. So that's why I want to bring them in.
Absolutely.
Fantastic, guys. Great segment. And by the way, kids, it took almost 6 months, but we're finally seeing surveillance video of the Vegas shooting suspect. What took so long? Experts are going to tell us what the videos reveal. Don't miss it.
Allergies with sinus congestion.
The Mandalay Bay Hotel in Vegas has now released the videos of Stephen Paddock in those days before the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history. Now, they show him standing close to the bellhops as they delivered numerous bags full of, well, we know what they were now, weapons and ammunition. Well, as the prime suspect in the October shootings, Paddock's motive remains a mystery, as he apparently killed himself rather than be captured. But let's ask the experts what the videos might reveal. Randy Sutton is a retired Las Vegas, police officer, and Aaron Cohen is a security and counterterror specialist. Great to see both of you. Randy, let's start with you. And I want to go piece by piece, if we could, through the video, because I think it's really important for us to get very specific and advance the analysis here as we do it. Now, first, we're watching Stephen Paddock checking in, which is the video we've been calling for months, at the Mandalay Bay front desk. Let's watch it. Yeah, so we can see him checking in. You guys have both watched it. What should we be looking for here?
Well, what we're seeing here is, he's a high roller. He's a heavy gambler, and he's checking in at the VIP desk, which is affording him. He doesn't have to stand in line like other people, so it's a very expedited process. And since they know him very well, he's just putting his name in there, getting there all the credit card stuff situated, and he's on his way.
And let's move on to the next piece of video, and this is with the bellboy and all the luggage. These are big bags, and he's bending over to fix his pants. Now, why is that in any way relevant, Aaron?
Well, he's shifted. First of all, he takes the back entrance, which the hotel claims is not uncommon. Taking a service elevator. I've never brought bags into a hotel in Vegas and gone through the service elevator. So obviously that's an advantage. And pardon me while I look at the footage as I'm explaining what's going on here. There's a second long delay. His body language, his hand is in his pocket. His legs are crossed, which means he's trying to block out any type of nervousness. He's got one hand up right now. It just looks like he's generally uncomfortable right now. He's fidgeting with his face. He's touching his face. That's not uncommon with a behavioral red flag with somebody who's trying to cover something. And again, he's scratching his head right now as I'm looking at the footage. So all of these, this is nonverbal communicating, Laura, which is what I'm trained in specifically in Israel for boarding flights in Israel to go to Israel. And this type of behavior, you can't lie with nonverbal communicating. And so what I'm seeing right now is somebody who's covering intensely, and he's fidgeting, he's moving, he's shuffling, he's turning, he's let's go, let's get the cart moving. He's just generally uncomfortable. The shirt is untucked also. There could be a weapon on his pants, who knows?
Randy, I want to ask you about this, the timeline that apparently is still not agreed to. There's no timeline that all authorities seem to say, yes, this is how it happened. There's a lot of still swirling conspiracy theories about what happened in Vegas.
Right.
It still seems really weird to me. I mean, that's just my, you know how you have a gut instinct about something? The guy was not really, he was known by authorities. We thought he had a criminal history, but then there wasn't a criminal history. There's a
lot at play here. But, what we saw today is very interesting in a couple different ways, though, Laura. This is the first time that we've been given the access to actually see him engaged in his daily activities while he was staying at the hotel. Now, you got to ask yourself, what's the timing? Why is this happening now? And I think it's very interesting that the hotel finally decided to give up this footage to a major news source. And what's the reason for that? Is it because there is so much in play here with people, espousing conspiracy theories that finally, if you look at this, there's finally something that we can actually, being interested in this subject, we're finally getting to see something here.
Well, and are we seeing something, Aaron, that informs us about the kind of guy he is, or motivation? We're not getting to any of that. He's a guy who sat in front of a slot machine for hours and hours and hours, and brought these heavy bags in a service elevator, a VIP check-in, swaying back and forth. We have the extra video here where we see him swaying back and forth with the bellboy as well, which we're going to see him there. Yeah, there it is. But still, we know nothing about this guy. The biggest mass shooting in U.S. history, and we know still very, very little about him. Aaron.
That's right, and that's why I'm jumping all over. You look at him right now. He's got the hands in his pocket. It's a very awkward shuffle he's doing. He's nervous. He's projecting nervousness. He's flagging like crazy, Laura, and these are the red flags that we look for. Again, in Israel, the difference between how we do security and how the rest of the world does security is that we know that you can spot the behavior of a murderer before he commits the act of murder. It's just as red flagged as it is afterwards. So he's flagging like crazy, and it's not the Mandalay-based fault. They're not trained in this. No one here in this country is really trained to do this, except for certain aspects of the FBI for their profiling and certain portions of Border Patrol, which is getting better, but we don't know anything about this guy. It's a complete mystery. I understand all the conspiracy. To go to Randy's piece, and I've known Randy for a while, Randy's very, very smart and knows Vegas better than anybody and knows how hotels are. I think that obviously the hotel put out the video to cover their butts. They want to get it out there and say, look, we can't. The hotel's basically, to me, what it's saying is, guys, you look at the evidence here and you look at this guy and you can see just as we can that he's just a normal guy. He's gambling. He's checking in. But once you start cracking this thing open, Laura, it's how do we use this video and this body language to prevent it from happening?
Yeah.
Correct.
Aaron,
20 bags is crazy going upstairs.
To you. Aaron, what do you think about the pathology that hasn't been addressed here at all? The pathology of a heavy gambler, a degenerate gambler, if you will, someone that can spend 8 hours at a time, literally spending hundreds of thousands of dollars at a sitting. How do you think that plays into the factors here? Because I think that there's something here that's being missed.
What do you think's being missed? That's my Israeli answer. Where are you going? Where are you leaning?
I think that the pathology of the degenerate gambler, it plays a role in the way we should be looking at this man as a suspect.
Well, they're socially isolated. They sit in front of a machine. I mean, you could say that about a lot of people sit in front of video games, but not everybody sits in front of a machine. We got blue-haired people all over Vegas tonight sitting in front of machines, like pushing the button. They don't even have the handle anymore. They just push the button like zombies.
Laura, I think what this is going to come down to is the tools have already been developed to be able to predict violence through looking at behavior. Yeah. And the question is when are we going to take the model that already works and how do we disperse it to the mega hotels and casinos and to all these other mega infrastructure places like the massive mall in Minnesota?
Absolutely.
And really start looking and creating behavioral detection programs, because really you can't throw more security guards at this problem. You have to train the guards. And as soon as we start taking the profession more seriously, then I think we're going to start having a different conversation.
It takes money, it takes training, and it takes, you can't be politically correct. And we're all politically correct, and that's part of it. Guys, we're out of time. I'm going to have you both on radio if you'll come on.
I'm in Toronto right now. It doesn't get any more politically correct. We're in the heart of political correctness here.
Absolutely. And, guys, fantastic segment. We got to continue that in radio. And up next, is YouTube trying to stifle free speech? Gun owners take note. Details ahead. YouTube has announced it's increasing its crackdown on firearms videos just ahead of Saturday's massive pro-gun control march in Washington. The site, which is owned by Google, recently banned videos showing how to make firearms fire more rapidly. Starting in April, YouTube will ban videos selling guns and certain accessories, as well as those that illustrate how to make or modify guns. So is this limiting free speech given the sheer size of YouTube? Well, let's discuss that with Independent Women's Voice President and Fox News contributor Tammy Bruce, who's in New York, and here with me in Washington, Hamza Khan, who's a Democratic strategist. It's great to see both of you. Tammy,
hey there.
I'm worried that these tech companies become so big and so powerful, they're like mini governments. And then you start seeing the censorship kick in. Your reaction tonight, now gun instructional videos, not bomb-making videos, but gun instructional videos banned.
And that's the worry, is that if they're concerned about the nature of teaching someone how to make a gun, it's different than it having an impact on instructional videos, even safety videos, how to clean your firearm, things like that, because we know this will be abused, right? But this is the other dynamic. Of course, it's not technically censorship in that the First Amendment's about the government and forestalling the government from doing this. But we're living in an age now that even the founders couldn't really imagine, where entities like Google and Facebook, as we know now, have such a large control of content of information about our own lives, and that we rely on them. We've built lives around and businesses around these entities, that now the issue becomes about squelching commercial speech. And this is what the government's, it's ironic, of course, as conservatives, we don't want more government regulation, but this is now a world that has been created where it's not just about convenience or fun of communication, but it is about our lives and our businesses and how we raise our children, et cetera. So we do have to begin to deal with it.
Gotta be careful, and let's move on and talk about, Hamza, what this means for viewpoint discrimination. Could this be the beginning of viewpoint discrimination by some of these tech companies? Like, it's now making a gun. What about making something that could be turned into a knife?
So we have to think about this from a couple point of view. First point of view that I think is really important is to recognize that maybe we have to revisit legislation in Congress when it comes to monopolistic competition and the power.
Okay, you're killing our audience. They're monopolistic competition. Oh my God, I'm dying.
It's important for us to talk about this.
I get your point, but you're so big and you're so powerful that you can control big bandwidths of information.
Exactly, and that limits freedom of expression in a lot of different ways. But if we want to move on to the other point that you have here, which comes down to whether or not YouTube should have this content on their site or not, we have to remember freedom of enterprise, freedom of speech goes both ways. A large company has decided that in their right, which they are a right to do, that they do not want to have this content on their website. And that's something we have to respect.
Would you feel the same way? Would you feel the same way if a major company that big, for instance, decided we're not going to put any pick your politically correct LGBT support group on our site because we don't agree with it? Would you not be on this show tonight saying, how dare you control, and that's casting aspersions on an entire community of gun owners here or people who have free choice to be whatever they want sexually?
Well, Laura, doesn't that bring us back to lobby hobby and cases like that a couple of years ago where on the right you were talking exactly about the same thing? We have to respect freedom of speech being a two-way street. This is what America is all about. Protecting freedom of enterprise, protecting the right of YouTube and Google and Alphabet, their parent company, not to have this content on there. That's what America was based on. That's what the First Amendment's about.
And Tammy, real quick, final word, real quick. We're almost out of time.
Yeah, look, it's also, you can deal with it on the abortion issue. If it's suddenly a discussion about getting rid of the nature of arguments from pro-choicers, you would be hearing the same kind of outrage. But we've got to make sure, as your point goes to, that this is about viewpoints and the nature of what's being squelched. It's like shadow banning conservatives on Twitter and the other problems we've had with conservative news sites on Facebook. We've already seen the trend, and ironically and strangely enough, it doesn't impact people on the left, does it?
All right, guys, we're out of time. A great segment. We'll have you both back. I know it's short. It's a leader of the Democratic Party and a congressman is calling for a maximum wage. I'll explain next.